Hi, I am Edouard François, French architect. I am here for a lecture in a Vis-à-vis series. I'm going to lecture in a couple of minutes, and we are in a museum, Beaux-Arts. I don't know exactly why I'm an architect. Probably it was my mother's idea, and because I'm coming from a very important family of mathematics. I come from a polytechnician family, and so I did some studies of mathematics, and after I did studies of art, and finally I did studies of architecture, and I returned to studies after of urbanisme in the Ponts-et-Chaussées. And I'm an architect, but I didn't like architecture, so I tried after studies about landscape architecture, so I did quite a lot of studies, and that's why probably I'm not exactly like the others. My inspirations are nature first, and art is very important for me to understand what happens, because art is an anticipation of what will arrive tomorrow. So looking at art gives a certain advance. And I'm very involved about cooking. What's happened in cooking is for me very interesting, because it's an important movement. Actually, you have a lot of problematic that are near. In cooking, you find, for example, you find geography, you find health with a problematic of, for example, of organic food, you find taste, you find seasons, you find a lot of things. So these are what inspire me in terms of for my architecture. I'm not sure there's a specification in terms of architectural schools in France. Probably there's a sort of a schools, European school are quite the same, and you have some extreme schools in London with an AA school that I was teaching there, Bartlett schools. But I think what is interesting for North American persons to go there to be teaching architecture is probably to see the European cities that are quite interesting and challenging for here, because here the main question is how to escape to this modernism vision of the cities, how to escape about this problematic of cars, how to make animation on the street. And coming in Europe, and probably particularly in France, it could be something that is very very interesting and very quick for them to understand the future of the cities here. I have the chance to have work on interesting buildings. For example, I did a Sprout building. It's a building in a region, south region of Montpellier. It's a building that is speaking about nature. I did it in 2000. Probably it's one of the first ecologic green building. I did recently a building on the Champs-Élysées that is a building that is dealing with the problematic of context in Paris. So it's a sort of a copy and past of a building of a Haussmannian building. I'm working on the first tower in Paris. It's not a tower that, as you can find here, it's not a 300 meters tower. It's only 60 meters high. But in Europe, it's very important, and specifically in Paris, because we have to work on this problematic of density for ecologic reasons. And town mayor asked me to give to the Parisians the desire to have tall buildings. So it's a building that is a green building with a green vegetation on the top. It's original vegetation, and with the birds and with the wind, it will pollinate the seeds on the city. It was for me a very interesting time to be there, and I thank the French Embassy to invite me. I had time to see students that are very strong and engaged in terms of architecture, and we had debate in between the future of the North American area and Europe, and the problematic of town here in Europe. I had conversation with persons in charge of urbanism in the city. I saw developers, and for me it was a very interesting experimentation. And for me it's a sort of very important exchange in between things that are research here and in between things that are research in Europe.